Alright, so are police officers heroes or crooks? That's a question that comes from mind to mind time to time. They can do acts as a hero, they can look as a Superman in front of us, but they can look as crooks at the same time. They've done some really crooked things, really corrupt things. Police abuse remains one of the most serious human rights violations in the world. It's not in the United States. This happens everywhere. Police abuse happens everywhere. Are officers of the law doing their job? That's a question that comes from time to time. At times they take cases that take over 4 years just to solve, when it could have easily been solved under a year. The excessive amount of force is another question that comes from mind to mind from time to time. How much force is available to a police officer, and how much non-lethal and lethal tactics should they be able to use? Are officers trained enough, and not just lethal tactics, but non-lethal tactics, like verbal tactics, how to communicate with their fellow citizens? Our officers serve on the line to put their lives on the line, and that's understandable. That's why they chose their path, so they can serve on the line. They don't care if they serve, they risk their life. That's their job. An officer serves on the line of duty for a reason. They'll do whatever it takes to keep us safe, and that's a good feeling at times. You got someone that'll take care of you. We have more deaths every year than the last. An officer is estimated to die once or twice every month. Law enforcement annually has more names entered in the wall of National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. It takes place police brutality takes place mostly in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Boston, New Orleans, and Minneapolis in the United States. So much there has been systems designed to stop brutality in these cities, which have unfortunately failed. Just because one works for the law, it doesn't put them above the law. No one's above the law. The percentage of police brutality has increased by over twice since the last decade. More than 23% of all police misconduct reported in 2010. 57% involved cases of physical use of force, and 15% involved the use of firearms. What good are officers that can't even do what they signed up for? Didn't they follow an oath to protect us? Instead of protecting the people that they swore to protect, they're instead endangering them and hurting them. Many people who are victims of police abuse of power feel they have no resource or ability to take action against those who injure them, which is true. At times, police departments delete any evidence because it'll look bad on behalf of them because of the misconduct that their officers use. Police officers have to use force in order to subdue suspected suspects, and that's understandable. It's more common for people to resist than it is for them to cooperate at times. Over 45% usually try to run away due to the fright that they have because of police officers. Every time you hear in the news of police misconduct, it can be threatening at times. You feel, wow, how do I feel safe in my own county? People bear their fangs at police officers at times, even though they've never been treated bad or had any misconduct at times. At times they have never even talked to an officer. So most people would rather cooperate. Most people would cooperate, but it's because of the fear that they have that makes them want to run away from an officer. Not always do officers have to use an excessive amount of force, though. Officers need to think before they act. It's almost as they act out of instincts, but everybody acts out of instincts at times. What's the point in our rights if at times we feel like we have none? The Patriot Act breaches the First Amendment, which declares our rights to freedom of expression. How can we express ourselves? Didn't we have that right? At times, we can't even speak because of that. While national legislative would only complicate matters further, local or statewide ballot propositions should allow the public to define reasonable use of force. So we, as the people that have the force used on us, we should be able to vote how much force is okay, like how much lethal and non-lethal tactics are. As there's still some racial discrimination going on in the department. Racism and segregation in the police department has been going on since we can never remember. But it's been mostly recorded in the early 1900s. African Americans have a higher chance of getting brutalized over whites. Everybody knows that. But not just African Americans. So are Native Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and much more other races. Not just, but whites are also tend to use force. Twice as many African Americans are being shot or brutalized than whites since the 20s. 20th century. Not just the minorities are highly targeted, not just that, minorities are highly targeted as well. Teens are usually also brutalized, mostly by police officers. The public face of a brutally victim is a young black, Latino, or Native teen. Failure to address this issue communicates that there is a safe target to abuse. So basically what they're saying is at times they can get away with the use of abuse on teens. Police officers don't have enough experience and training exercises for their careers at times. Officers should communicate rather than act out of conduct. Many departments don't provide adequate training and nonviolent solutions. This is obvious when dealing with pets. Pets is also a way of police brutality, not just humans, but pets. Why are officers militarizing themselves as if there was a war going on? At times you see in New York, you see a huge crowd full of just police officers ready to go on a riot, ready to stop a strike. Weapons of war have no place on our street, yet local police officers are equipped with weapons powerful enough to conquer small states. Although possession of this isn't misconduct, it can feel threatening at times. Police brutality is a frequent thing that happens from small cases to more significant ones. No one is above the law, not even those that work for it. Not always do officers need to use an excessive amount of force. The racial discrimination needs to change. Our officers need to be better trained toward nonviolent situations. Why are our officers hurting those that they've made an oath to protect?
Okay, questions? You call on.
If people vote on how much force is used by a cop, what happens when the cop is in a dangerous situation, but by the force law voted by the people, he can't defend himself? What do we do then?
Well, at times we should also not just vote for non-lethal tactics, we should also vote for lethal tactics. At times you shouldn't just right out the bat take out your firearm. But if you're in a situation where there's 2 out of 1 victim, so you're the police officer is the victim, and there's 2 people ready to beat him or endanger him, it is okay to take out your firearm and threaten, but not shoot. That's why there's a safety mode in the firearm.
What if they don't get it? What if they don't fall for the threat?
That they don't fall for the threat. Well, at first, officers always call for backup. That's the #1 thing an officer should always do, call for backup. So you should wait until your backup arrives, and then you should come. It's better for officers, well, it's not better, but it's okay for officers to come out in packs to prevent situations from happening and rising up.
One more.
You said that African Americans aren't the only ones that are brutalized by police, and that Native Americans and Latinos, etc., are also too. And you also said that police brutality, there have been recordings of documentation of police brutality since the early 1900s. Do you have any source that
Remember last year when they showed us the video of that one kid that whistled at that one lady and they cut off his tongue?
Emmett Till?
Yep. Police brutality right there. 1950s.